armed forces provides amazing training.
I think about veterans as people who have already figured out how to serve.
My military skills have been essential.
Hiring veterans is a great business case. They're the best employees we have. They're flexible, hardworking, and they're used to a global workplace.
If that isn't an asset to any company, I don't know what is.
Hiring America, the award-winning television job fair for American veterans. Connecting you with companies who know your value. Learn about employers who are actively hiring today and organizations that support veterans. Your future success starts right here on Hiring America.
Hiring America, produced in partnership with DAV, fulfilling our promises to the men and women who served.
Welcome to Hiring America. I'm Lauren Wanko. Today we have a special show about veterans and the issues they face in the workforce. It's a town hall meeting from the George W. Bush Institute in Dallas, co-produced with WorkingNation, a not-for-profit dedicated to exposing hard truths about the looming unemployment crisis and bringing the country together around solutions for a changing economy. We assembled a group of business leaders, national and local leaders, nonprofits, and veterans to have a frank conversation about the many programs and initiatives that are helping veterans transition into the civilian workplace and the work that still needs to be done. Here's my colleague, Stephanie Tsai.
I'm honored to introduce a very special guest to help kick off this discussion, General George Casey, who spent more than 40 years serving in the U.S. Army, including assignments in Europe, the Balkans, and the Middle East. From 2007 to April of 2011, General Casey led the Army as its Chief of Staff. He continues to serve the country and its veterans as an advocate for wounded soldiers, military families, and survivors of the fallen.
Thank you, Stephanie.
General Casey, why don't you start by giving us some context on the issue?
Throughout my whole career, the Army didn't pay much attention to transition. It was a check-the-block program. But over time, people came to realize that if we accelerate and improve the transition, it accelerates the way veterans can integrate into society. In 2014, the Department of Defense came out with a directive that completely revamped the transition programs, and it's made a significant impact. And the private sector got involved in a big way, both in nonprofit organizations that supported the transition of veterans, but also the big companies. I don't know a major U.S. company that doesn't have a veterans hiring initiative. Shortly after I left the active duty, I was reading a conference board report, and they had gone out and they had polled a bunch of CEOs, and they said, what qualities are you looking for in your workforce? And the CEOs came back and said, we want good work ethic, we want strong values, we want the ability to communicate, we want the ability to solve problems, and we want the ability to work as a member of a team. And as I read that, I said to myself, that sounds like the outfit I just left. So there you go, Stephanie, that's a starter.
That's some really terrific context, and it does sound like, with your long lens of history in the armed services, it does sound like there have been a lot of improvements in the rate of veteran employment. But I want to touch on this issue that you bring up, which is, when you're in the military, you're in a team. You're also in a hierarchical structure. How do you transition from being a service member where everybody wakes up at the same time, eats at the same time, into a corporate culture, and I don't want to presume that all of American corporate culture is the same, but where individuality matters, where individual problem solving matters? How do you transition? And is that an issue that's come up for veterans that do have a hard time fitting in?
The military is definitely a hierarchical organization, but you still have to deal with people. And what the interesting thing is, what people don't see is, when the men and women are deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan, they are the most innovative and creative people you can imagine. I mean, their lives are on the line. And so they're looking for anything that can make a difference. It is a change, and a lot of it is personality driven. I mean, some people like the structure and the rigidity of hierarchical structures. and they don't adapt. But the vast majority of the people are very creative, and they have adapted, and they will adapt.
It occurred to me that a lot of the veterans that are returning really came back as heroes. They saw combat and they did things that might have earned them military honors, and then they have to come back potentially into a corporate culture that doesn't necessarily see that. They're just a cog in the machine. Is that hard for veterans to adjust to?
They're already a cog
in the military.
In the big military machine. They're a cog. But I you know, what I see is they don't want to be treated like heroes. They want to be, you know, tell me what it is you want me to do, give me the training, and let me get on with it. The vast majority of folks, when you call them a hero, they cringe a little bit. I mean, I do. I'm not a hero, and most of the folks will tell you the same thing. They want to get on with it. They want to be part of the new team that they're on.
General Casey, thank you so much for kicking this event off with those terrific insights.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, good.
When we return, we'll continue to discuss the roadblocks, but we'll look at how businesses and organizations around the country are working towards solutions.
Continue the conversation on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and sign up to receive our newsletter at hiringamerica.net.
Welcome back to Keeping America's Promise, our town hall on the work being done in Texas and nationwide to help our veterans move into civilian occupations. Let's get our conversation going. And I want to introduce our panelists. Jeff Cleland is the manager of the Bush Presidential Center Military Service Initiative. John Courson is the president and CEO of the Home Builders Institute. Also joining us is Jeff Hall, the National Employment Director for the Disabled American Veterans with 1.3 million members. And finally, I'd like to welcome to the stage Nicole Gardner, Vice President and founder of the Public Service Eminence Academy for IBM Global Business Solutions. Welcome, and thank you all so much for this important discussion. And I want to start with the corporate bigwig amongst you, and that is you, Nicole. Tell us what IBM is doing to recruit and retain veterans, especially because the technology sector is so important.
Problem solving, teamwork, great leadership skills. These are all very highly valued skills in the workforce, and IBM's very, very interested in getting as many of those great people to come and work and add to our team. We have a terrific training program that we offer as a free in-classroom training for certification on I2, which is an analyst program. It's a software tool that is very widely used across many industries. So we hire people who come out of that program, and we have given a leg up to veterans who get that certification and can take that as a credential. More than 500 people have gone through the program already.
One of the things that I wanted to lay out from the beginning after speaking to many of you is just the importance of work for a veteran. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to that, Jeff, the importance of veterans coming back from deployment and transitioning, and why work and what type of work is meaningful to them and why it's so important.
Yeah, I think from a societal level, we pretty much know that if you have meaningful employment, you're less likely to use government services, you're less likely to commit crimes, you're less likely to use healthcare services. There's all these other implications that come to it. So it's important for these transitioning service members to find that right job so that way they're living a meaningful life. But finding that meaningful job is just important for all these other issues that maybe surround the transition itself.
Jeff Hall, with disabled veterans, can you speak to that as well, and maybe some of the unique challenges that one might face if they've been injured in the battlefield and come back now as a disabled veteran looking for work in the civilian marketplace?
I didn't really care what I was doing when I got out. I just knew I needed to go to work because you need to keep the continuation of the getting up and going with purpose. And it didn't really register with me, you know, because I wasn't in this career at that particular point. But 25 years later of talking with veterans in various capacities, whether it's helping them through our service program with getting their benefits, whether it's disability benefits because they'd been injured, or the many others. When we started doing these career fairs, we didn't really gauge how many people walking through the door would be somebody that was suffering from a service-related disability. And so that altered to what we were doing, DAV, when we're working with companies that are there helping them find that candidate. It transitioned us on the floor to be able to have these conversations of, are you getting your benefits? Because as much as employment and the continuation of that is important, so too are finding those resources and making sure they're getting their benefits, because it all goes
Absolutely.
hand in hand.
John Courson, I want to bring you into this conversation and Home Builders Institute, because when we talk about different ways that veterans can get trained, you actually go to the bases and train veterans before they're even veterans, when they're still active duty and they're on their way out. Talk about why that's important to start recruiting before they've actually left the service.
We're actually going physically on military installations. We are training military personnel who are going to transition out of the service within 180 days. The typical demographic in that program is soldiers, Marines, airmen, so on, that are probably served their first enlistment, maybe their second. They're in their mid-20s, 23, 24, 25, came into the service right out of high school. Many of them do not have a skill that's portable into the civilian industry. And there come a high number come from the artillery, infantry side. And frankly, to be all due respect to my corporate friends, they don't want to sit behind a desk. They want to do something that keeps them working as a team, outdoors with their hands and so on. So we've put our program in these situations, and what we try to do is make sure than just train them, that we go through a step of connecting with them. We assess each one. What do you want to do when you leave in 2 months or 3 months? What do you really want to do long-term with your career? We train them with that curriculum. They get a certification. And every place we train, we have a job placement function. And right now, we're placing well over, in fact, most bases, 100% of those soldiers into jobs in the construction industry.
We'll have more of this town hall discussion from the George W. Bush Presidential Center in a moment.
I'm a veteran. We hit a mine in Vietnam. When I came home, I didn't know where to turn.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
My victory's been never giving up hope. My wife is always there to remind me we have a life to live.
DAV provides a lifetime of support, helping veterans of every generation get the benefits they've earned.
I am a veteran, but after I got out, I spent 2 years alone and homeless.
Every year, DAV helps more than 1 million veterans so they can reach victories great and small.
My victory was finding the support to get back on my feet. Now I'm getting things right with my family.
I finally admitted, with my PTSD, I wasn't doing well.
But there's more to be done and more victories to be won.
Now I wish I'd found DAV sooner. I am a veteran. My victory is just enjoying each day.
For help with employment or obtaining your veterans' benefits, visit jobs.dav.org.
Retention is another issue. And I don't know if any of you on this panel want to start off this discussion about retention.
In our case, Stephanie, we follow them for a year, but more importantly, it's to make sure that they know what they're getting into with the job. Our job training is about 75% hands-on, so they know what it's like to go out and work on a construction site. We want the last day of their training with us to be just like the first day of the job that they're placed in, so that there's no surprises, they understand what they want, and at the same time, they leave with a plan and a thought about what the career path is for them.
There is a percentage of returning veterans that have suffered some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder, combat stress. And obviously that's been really highlighted a lot in recent years in good ways, but I wonder if the amount of attention that's been paid to PTSD has had the knock-on effect of making employers biased against military hires.
Yeah, there is a stigma that comes with it, and we've done some work here at the Bush Center around that, and did a survey of about, I think it was 1,500 U.S. veterans and U.S. citizens and civilians, and then also in the UK and Canada as well on the stigmas and stereotypes around it. And by and large, the American population as well as Canadian UK population think that PTSD is a larger portion of that population. So if you kind of extrapolate that down to HR managers, you're going to assume that they think every veteran who comes in front of them is going to have some sort of issue, which is not the case. Your average service member, mostly, probably somewhere around 80% are getting out with no physical or mental issues coming into the workplace. And those who do have PTSD or post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, those symptoms can be manageable through treatment and through proper workforce rehabilitation type programs.
Jeff Hall, you speak with a lot of potential employers at job fairs, and from these conversations, you've developed the DAV Employer Guide to Hiring and Retaining Disabled Veterans. What have you learned, and what do you recommend to the business community?
Early on, we were focused more on the veteran walking through the door and really making every effort for them on that end of it. And it kind of eventually led us to those conversations more with the employers before the career fair and then post-career fair. And one thing kind of led to the other, to where we felt it best, being DAV and who we are, that we put together, working with some companies and doing our research and everything, to have a guide that would be available free of charge for companies that just simply visit our website at jobs.dav.org. They simply go there, and it wouldn't be something overly dense. It would be more on the top of the end of it that's going to answer most of those basic questions that we were getting at these career fairs. What do I do in this situation? Well, we'd like to hire, veterans, but, when we look on their resume and that we see that, they've been, in combat, what should we be looking for? And it's really an off-putting question by nature of what it is. If you're screening veterans for PTSD, that boat is full. It's not an uncommon disability that's out there, number one. And number two, it's not something employers should shy away from. In fact, what they should, in my opinion, focus on is the fact that if they've been in a situation like that, this is another skill set that a veteran brings to the table. With the many we've talked about today, is the fact that they have the inherent ability to work under extreme pressure and in a diverse and most likely global situation, which any company, an IBM or anybody, could benefit from. And so we try to reverse that thinking when we talk with them, and hopefully our guide is going to help a lot of these companies answer those basic questions.
Nicole, do you have a program at IBM to try to integrate veterans so they don't feel, regardless of whether they have PTSD, that they can fit into a technology company?
We have a program that we've been working on with the VA on resiliency. We're really excited about what the VA has been doing to try and help people to get from transition and through and to thrive. And we have been collaborating with them on a digital tool that basically helps vets to understand what jobs are out there, because thriving starts with having the economic opportunity to support your family and support yourself, and to have the self-esteem that knows that you're valued and that you're seen.
So it's a phone app.
It's a phone app. Basically has a context of trying to help people to understand what the components of transition and resiliency are. And it basically helps to figure out what jobs might be out there. The big vision is to offer help writing resumes, help doing an interview, help with the wardrobe of what you need to do to be prepared to present yourself for a job. Basically, it's a chatbot. And the chatbot, if you type into it, "I need a job," will actually start asking you some questions. And it qualifies and asks you what kind of job you'd like to have and where you'd like to apply, what geographic area, and what the required salary is. And this particular app right now is connected to USA Jobs, so it's a national job bank, but our vision is to include lots of different job opportunities from Indeed and Monster and all the big companies.
I wanted to thank you all for offering solutions and surfacing some of the challenges, because I think that's where the conversation needs to go next. So thank you very much.
Be a part of this important conversation and find more of this town hall discussion at WorkingNation.com. We'll be right back.
Thanks for watching. The information we've just shared is all on our website, hiringamerica.net. Log on and find out more about the companies who are hiring veterans. And connect with us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, where you can find helpful tips and full episodes of the show. I'm Lauren Wonko. Join us again next week for another episode of Hiring America.